Parenting is the hardest job, and there is not a close second. Raising high-performing teen athletes or performers? That's a high-stakes job. I'm Nate Crandall, joined by fellow certified high-performance coach Steve Galley. We coach ambitious parents like you, and also your high-performing teens, because when you both level up, connection and results don't just improve, they multiply. Welcome to the Stop Parenting and Start Coaching podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest you don't want to miss.
Today's guest wants to throat punch the Gen Z mental health crisis. Yep, you heard that right. Dr. Andrea D is not here for soft answers or tired tactics. She's a powerhouse sports mom and psychologist who's giving you the tools to parent with clarity, warmth, and some serious authority. Buckle up. Is that a good intro?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I could keep going. I could keep going with this lady. So, Dr. Andrea, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up my dad immigrated here from Mexico when he was 22, met my mom. She was the girl next door. They had 3 boys. And then 7 years later, they were blessed with me. And then we grew up on the south side of Chicago. And that's where we lived happily, sarcastically. Lots of my cousins were around because they also immigrated from Mexico as well. And so like any given 4th of July, there'd be like 75 Mexicans all just running around, poking jokes at each other and having fun. Absolutely loved it. Then given some stuff which I'm sure we'll get into, life's completely changed. I went on and got a PhD in clinical child psychology. And then now I was a professor for 9 years. I was tenured and promoted. I decided to leave a job I could never be fired from. And then now I'm doing private practice and doing sports psych on the side and absolutely loving it.
Well, you alluded to something that happened. I guess we could refer to this as a major life event. And you speak about it in a TED Talk that you gave. In fact, I want our listeners to know this is how I became acquainted with Andrea. And it's also this on that same day, I thought, I want to talk to Andrea and I want to have her on our podcast at some point. And so here we are. But I don't think we're going to talk a lot about the TED Talk, but I want our listeners to go listen to it. Give us a little bit of and I hate to even say teaser because that sounds like just kind of a playful word. And the subject of your TED Talk is very, very serious.
Yeah, so I remember, the title of the TED Talk is From Murder to Mission, How I Found My Life's Calling. I remember when I delivered my TEDx talk, my best friend, Lauren, she actually posted on social media like a screenshot of me like delivering my TEDx talk in real time. And then she was like, I laughed, I cried, I felt all of these emotions. She's like, it was so powerful. And that's the number one word that people use to describe when they watch my TEDx talk is that it is so powerful. I was emailing with a woman yesterday and she's like, it is so moving. And I was like, well, thank you. That was the whole point of it. And I remember my big thing was whenever I share my story previously, before I delivered my TEDx talk, I would overwhelm people with the story. People didn't know how to respond. And then with me working with Eva Daniels, my speech coach, like we were able to deliver my story in a way that's powerful instead of overwhelming people.
Well, that's how it affected me. It was extremely powerful. I remember just saying, wow. And I'm a TEDx junkie, but this was very emotional. Nice little plug for Eva too. Yeah, she's
her
awesome.
and I are close friends.
That's fantastic. You have written a book. In fact, if you were to check your left blind spot right now, you would see your book sitting on your bookshelf back there. I don't want Nate to be jealous, but I've got my personal signed copy here from Andrea.
Yet I'm the one that has the giant library of awesome books.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, Dr. Dre, both of us are readers. We have more books and more stuff that we've forgotten than we remember. And I when I got this, I still remember we were on a trip to Denver. And so I read this in and out of airports and on airplanes. And I was learning and laughing the entire way through, learning and laughing. And I want to share something that just comes out, little spoiler alert. She tells a story of her and a college professor and how he was trying to get people to read things. And she fully appreciates that all the parents that need to read this are too busy to read it. So anyway, this is what she said. This book will not be your typical parenting book. There will not be long chapters talking all about developmental theory or citing all the research. Again, these things, unless you're a scientist, a nerd, or both, like me, are long, dry, and boring. Ain't nobody got time for long explanations. It will literally be something that you can read while you poop. Because let's be real, the amount of time that it takes you to poop is about the amount of free time you have to become an intentional parent. My favorite bookmark of all time. I have lots of bookmarks. I have nothing that can compare to this right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I give all the credit to that
free
bookmark.
With the book?
Yes. If you order it from me.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We need to make sure everybody knows how to order it from you then.
Mm-hmm.
Because that bookmark's amazing.
Yeah, we won't forget that at the end.
Yeah,
So,
I have to give
Dr.
all
Dre,
credit for that bookmark to Adam Tanaka. Like he's a merch guy, and I was like, hey, I want to do something, but I don't want to do like the typical boring thing. And he's like, bookmarks. He's like, but don't just do like the rectangle, have it be this. And I told my illustrator who did all the illustrations in the book, and he came up with this. And I was like, yes.
For the people that are just listening to this, what does that bookmark look like?
So there's Coop the Poop. He has a name, which is like did you know the poop emoji is actually trademarked and you can't like use it in publications? So I had an illustrator draw my own poop emoji. So his name's Coop the Poop. And so it's Coop the Poop on top of a roll of toilet paper. And it's like the roll of paper is like going down. And now that I think of it, is it up or down? It is totally down. That's the wrong way to have toilet paper. I need to talk to my illustrator.
Yeah, I go
promoting
over the top.
bad habits.
I go over the top.
Yeah, it's gotta flow.
Yeah,
gotta. Well, I can't get over the fact that I'm actually talking to Dr. Dre. I think that's so cool. My little teenage self would be falling all over. I get to talk to Dr. Dre, but the real one. So, Andrea, I don't know if I'll get in trouble for that, but I love that you've taken everything that's happened to you and turned it into such an incredible positive cause. How did you end up with clinical child psychology and then the sports psychology stuff along with it?
So I was a 3-sport athlete my whole life. So I did basketball, volleyball, volleyball, and softball. So I've been playing softball since I was in 5th grade, and I ended up doing it through one semester of college. And it was always like a passion of mine. And when I was going to grad school, you have to have like a specific research topic. And I knew I wanted to do clinical child psychology, and I wanted to focus in on like behavioral problems and antisocial and aggressive behavior. But I need something to pair that with. And I remember when I was driving for my interview to get into grad school at Kent State, I had this idea, and I was like, well, why am I so successful even though I grew up in this gang-infested neighborhood on the south side of Chicago? Why was I different? And so I started to realize, it's because I played 3 sports and I didn't have time to get in with the gang or whatever else, all of the other shenanigans that were going on in my neighborhood, because I was playing sports all of the time and I saw an outlet for it. And so when I got to the interview and I was interviewing with my mentor, who ended up being my mentor, Manfred, and he's like, okay, say you have unlimited funds and you could do any research that you possibly want to do. What are you doing? And I was like, and I told him my idea, and he pauses, and he's from the Netherlands. So if you know, like Dutch people, they're very serious. He like pauses and he looks at me and he goes, I've always wanted to do that research. I just never had a grad student who wanted to do it. And I was like, yes. And I knew at that moment that I was going to get into one of the hardest programs to get into in the nation. And so when I got there, we started doing more kind of research on how extracurricular activities impacts youth mental health, specifically like antisocial and aggressive behavior and anxiety and depression. And then I remember when I was a college professor, the person who was teaching sports psych ended up retiring, and they're like, hey, can you teach this? And I was like, yeah. And so I taught sports psych for 7 years. And then when I was there, I remember I used to deliver a talk on substance use to the football team. And one of the assistant coaches would be in the audience. And then fast forward to February of 2021, he like messages me. He's like, hey, can we meet? And I was like, sure. He's like, I'm now the head coach of Findlay High School football. He's like, I want you to come and like lead my leadership stuff. And I was like, okay. And he's like talking to me about his quarterback. And I'm like, your quarterback needs composure training. And he's like, he needs what? I'm like, composure training. And he's like, what is that? And so I started explaining it to him. And he's like, you know what? He's like, you're just going to do whatever it is that you do. And I'm going to be hands off. And from then I started coaching high school football players. And then it just kind of grew into like a side hustle.
Wow. Composure training. That sounds intense.
Mm-hmm. And the funny thing was that so we had a 4-star quarterback, and I think it was his sophomore year. He was in basketball season, and Michigan was interested in him. And one of the football coaches came down and was watching him play basketball. And then after the game, the Michigan football coach looked at our head coach and was like, I don't like his body language. And our head coach was like, noted, heard. And then the head coach looks at me like a few days later, and he's like, hey, Michigan doesn't like our quarterback's body language. Fix it. And I was like, okay. So that spring, we spent so much time working on our 4-star quarterback's composure and body language.
Wow. That right there would be like a whole episode that we could do for our parents, because we have so many parents of high performers, great athletes, but they need stuff like that composure training. What helps parents to be able to help their kids with stuff like that?
I think the big thing is it's like noticing, I think having an expectation of how you want your children to behave, both on the court, field, and off the court, and having a similar expectation. Like if you wouldn't allow your child to bang their head against the wall because they made a mistake in your house, well, then you're not going to allow them to like bang their head because they threw an interception. And so I think it's like, you have to figure out what is it that your values are? What are those behavioral expectations that you have for your kids, and make sure that they are consistent on and off the field.
Are we talking about emotional regulation?
Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what composure training is like. When you are having big emotions, how are you able to ride that emotional wave that you have and do it in a way that's going to cause you to meet your goals? So for this young man, like his composure was not going to get him to Michigan. Spoiler alert, he didn't go to Michigan. Thank goodness. But and so like, but there's other kids that like their emotions get in the way of reaching their goals. So the first thing that comes to mind is Travis Kelce, not this Super Bowl, but I think it was like the last Super Bowl, where he literally put hands on Coach Andy. Like that was not like, I remember I wrote a LinkedIn post about it, and I was like, this is completely inappropriate. Like, we do not put hands, no matter what emotion you are feeling, like, you do not put hands on anybody, let alone your coach, let alone your parents. And I remember I got a lot of flack from that post, and people were like, you don't understand their relationship. But then later on, like, Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey were on their podcast, and Jason Kelsey, like, his brother, was like, dude, you stepped out of line, like, that was inappropriate. And I was like, thank you, I feel validated.
You should. And I think that's part of the challenge that parents face, is that kids almost get a mixed message on that. They hear that, it's like, well, it's such a big game, it's such a big moment. He can do that because he's super competitive. These kids want to be competitive, they want to be at that level, and so they think, oh, maybe that's okay.
And it's not. And, like, that's the thing that I absolutely love about the head coach. And I don't know if I would ever do what I do for a football team with another head coach, because, like, he gets it. He knows that, like, the vast majority of our young men are not going to go Division I, let alone NFL. Like, we may have, knowing who we may have like 2 go to the NFL, maybe 3, but, like, because they're that good. But they're going to be coaches, they're going to be brothers, they're going to be husbands, and we want them to have the life skills that they need in order to thrive.
So you said you'd only do it for the one coach. So I'm going to assume that a lot of coaches out there, probably across all sports, aren't necessarily of this mindset of training kids in the psychological stuff, which means parents have a little bit of that onus to do that for their kids. How can parents build the connections that allow them to be in a position to transform their teens' mindset?
Yeah, I think reaching out. So, one of the biggest things that I love about sports psychology is that it's such a growing field. It is growing so rapidly. I remember, I think it was back in like 2014, I was at an NCAA convention, or like a rules meeting, whatever, and it was called Regional Rules. And they were talking about how, I can't remember when it was, but they wanted every NCAA institution to have a sports psychologist on staff. And I remember, like, when probably back at that time, I think Ohio State had 1 sports psychologist, and now they have like 3 sports psychologists with some postdocs as well. And so I think more and more people are going to see it. And I think they're starting to notice at like the high school level, because that's really when we can be getting kids these skills. Just people don't know about it. Like, I was talking to a woman just earlier this morning, and she's like, wait, what's sports psychology? And her husband is like a high school basketball coach. And I was like, this is what it is.
Wow.
And she's like, our boys need that. And I was like, yes, they do. And she's like, would you come and do workshops? And I was like, yes, I will come and do workshops, but I will not be on the sidelines with your boys like I am with my high school football team.
I love this. Both Nate and I have taught sports psychology in high school. I'm gonna throw a curveball at you, Dr. Dre.
Yeah.
This question has been asked by multiple parents, and I have my answers for them. But I've had one spouse in a marriage come to me and say, Steve, so-and-so, they're pointing the finger at the other spouse who's not there. And they say, they act crazy at the games. Like they are a horrible example for our son, for our daughter. And I tell her, it's not always, I mean, it's both genders too. It's like she goes nuts or he goes crazy. It's a little embarrassing. And I tell them, and they say, yeah, I know, but this is just who I am. What would you say to both parents actually? What would you say to them? Because their kids see this or they hear about it one way or the other.
Oh,
and they
absolutely.
know that their dad's crazy in the stands. Or, if football, maybe not so much. Definitely like basketball, volleyball, a little closer to the action. They'll hear it and see it. What would we do? What should we do?
I mean, I think a big thing is, and I know more and more youth sport programs are starting to do this, but they're creating a contract, like a contract specifically for how parents are expected to behave at games, because so many parents are just acting a fool. Like, I could probably write a whole book just sharing stories of parents acting a fool at sporting events. And it doesn't do your child well. A lot of the time, I just tell parents, like when we're having conversations about this, I'm like, just be your child's cheerleader. They have a coach already. If you want to be their coach, then go be their coach. But what your child needs from you when you are in the audience, when you're in the stands, is they just need you to cheer them on in a positive way and not be yelling nonsense at the coaches like, you should be running, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, just cheer them on and be motivating. We don't need to be coaching from the stands because you don't know what the game plan is.
But it's a stupid game plan. Anyway,
You know, if you did that book, you could probably keep the bookmark that you have.
It could be like the number 2 parenting for sports book.
Yeah. The poopy things parents say in the stands.
There you go. We have the title, Nate.
Yes. I love contributing to people's books. It's awesome. So so much of emotional regulation, and like you'd be able to speak to this a lot more than I can with this, but so much of emotional regulation comes from what kids see from their parents.
Mm-hmm.
How can parents model the emotional regulation that's going to help set their kids up for a successful athletic run?
I think the big tip is like practicing learning. So few adults have like a good emotion regulation skills. And so I think like going out, seeking out services, learning emotion regulation skills, like learning, okay, deep breaths, but like, what do we mean by deep breaths? A lot of the time, like deep breaths don't work for people. And I'm like, well, because you don't understand the science behind it. In order for deep breaths to work, your exhale has to be longer than your inhale. That's the neuroscience behind breathing. But like, there's so many people promote box breathing. And I'm like, it doesn't work. The exhale has to be longer than the inhale. And I think being willing to like acknowledge that you're having big emotions and that you need to figure out like what is your emotion escalations. Okay, when you have big emotions, what does your body typically do? What does your mind do? What do you feel? And then can you figure out okay what that sequence is and then learn emotion regulation skills that's going to help you not get to that volcano levels of those emotions where we start to do like stupid stuff, like punching people and hitting people and yelling at people. There's much better ways to deal with our emotions than that volcanic explosion that Travis Kelce did 2 years ago.
What's a tip or two you would give a parent to help improve their self-awareness? So if they were like, they didn't have the time or maybe even the resources to go and get some composure training of their own,
Mm-hmm.
what could they do to increase their self-awareness?
I think probably the biggest thing is like I think reflection is huge. So if and when you have like like that volcanic, eruption, or even when you just lose your cool, a lot of the times I will have people sit down and do what I call situation, thought, feelings, body reaction. And so what you do is you just say, okay, what was the situation? What was I doing? Who was I with? Where was I at when I lost my cool? Okay, so there you have details there. And then you get into the thought column, which is, okay, what was I thinking immediately before I lost my cool? And what was I thinking when I lost my cool? Then you go into your feelings, your emotions, like what feelings were you angry? Were you frustrated? Were you irritated? Like what was going on there? And then body reactions, like what was your body doing? And once you collect that data, then you can start to look to see what are those instances that are going to, what are those environments that are going to kind of trigger you. I hate that word, but at this point it works. It's going to trigger you to have more of this emotional outburst. And then for you to become aware of like, oh, I get really mad. Like I get agitated, like when we're out to eat with my kids and they're all hanging on me, like I just want to eat in peace. And so like knowing that, and it's like, oh, I just lost my cool with my kid. Oh, it was because they're hanging all over me and I don't like that. And so I need to notice, and then I need to make sure that I'm setting boundaries with my children so that they know like, hey, don't hang on me when I'm trying to eat. Like I just want to be left alone. And I think like setting up those boundaries once you realize kind of what makes you lose your cool.
I really love that practical technique of thinking about going through the situation, going through the thinking, going through the feeling. Before I ask you the next question, if somebody was trying to fix that, I don't know if fix is the right word. Do you have them focus on changing the thinking?
So then usually what I go into is I talk about the psychology triangle and how your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors are all interconnected. And lots of people want to change their feelings, but we actually have no control over our feelings.
Right.
And so I tell them when I'm doing like working with them, I tell them like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to challenge your thoughts that lead you to have these feelings that are going to like cause you to be angry and those kind of things. And we're going to also tackle you changing your behaviors that also lead to these feelings. And by doing those two things, it's going to change how you feel, because when you challenge your thoughts and you learn how to change your behaviors, then you start to feel in ways that you actually want to feel.
Beautiful. I'm 100% on board with that. Let's get even more practical. Let's go to the football sidelines, which, okay, you're on the exciting, thrilling, sometimes smelly sideline with a high school football team. And what do you do? By the way, as a former high school basketball coach for almost 30 years, I would have loved to have a Dr. Dre on the bench with me. I would have loved that. What do you do with a kid that comes off that's very frustrated?
So what I would do, so if I had a player that came off the field and they were very, very frustrated, what I would do is I would have them sit down, probably have them do 5-8 breathing. So breathe in through your nose for 5 seconds, hold your breath for 2 seconds, and then exhale through your mouth for 8 seconds. I would have them do that probably 4 to 8 times. It takes about 1 minute to 2 minutes. And then that's going to turn off their fight, flight, freeze, and usually the fight in them. And then I'm able to, once that is turned off and their prefrontal cortex is no longer hijacked, then I'm going to be able to have them focus in on, and this is one of the biggest things that I do with a lot of my football players, is like, what's the one thing? Just focus on the one thing you need to do the next time you go out on the field to be better or to play better, to turn it around. I think a lot of the times my football players, they focus in on all of these things that they have to do and they just get so overwhelmed. And I tell them one thing.
Hey there, listeners. We lost Dr. Dre back when we were recording this episode. We're not quite sure what happened. It was either the Ohio heat wave at the time, alien interference, or it could have been a University of Michigan saboteur. I tend to lean towards the aliens. So please just treat this as a halftime, and we're going to bring back Dr. Dre and most likely publish that episode in anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks from now. We have so many more questions for her, and we're excited to have Dr. Dre back. If you are finding this podcast helpful, useful, or beneficial in any way, please share it with a parent. Make that an ambitious parent of a high school athlete or performer. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you soon.
Nate Crandall and Steve Gallagher would like to thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you love what you're experiencing and learning from the Stop Parenting and Start Coaching podcast, please like, comment, and or leave a glowing review of this episode and the show. And to further help Nate and Steve expand their reach and impact thousands of parents, athletes, and performers, please share the show and subscribe to the Stop Parenting and Start Coaching podcast channel on YouTube. And if you want to explore further to see what Nate and Steve are creating to help parents of athletes and performers everywhere, please visit their website at createtransformbecome.com. That's createtransformbecome, all one word, .com. There you will find a growing number of tools and resources to help you elevate your parenting. Thanks again for tuning in. Now go create a magical relationship with your athlete or performer.